This is just a general, I would say, sprat setup. So sport trad, you know, I mean, you're just pounding up pitches.
Wow, was that ever a true statement? But man, did I not appreciate just how true that statement was. Yeah, 2 years ago, I shot a video that overviewed the trad rack that I built, and at the end of that video, I described that rack as being a sprat rack. Sprat is not a term that I coined. It's a term that I believe I read out of a Rock and Ice article. And what it refers to is essentially sport climbing where the climbs are protected in a traditional manner, i.e. trad. What I really didn't appreciate in that video was the grade part of the YDS system, or the Yosemite decimal system. At the end of the rating for a particular climb, or especially in a multi-pitch climb, you'll have a grading system for that particular climb, i.e. grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe is what it goes up to. It might go to 7. And what that refers to is really just the time commitment that a particular climb would require. Largely what I was doing at that period when I shot that video was just grade 1 climbs, an hour or two. And the tactics that I was employing at that time was reflective in the rack that I showcased. Now, that's not to say that I hadn't done some grade 2 and 3 climbs prior to that video. It goes to show you that even the gear that I was using for these general grade 1, maybe 2 climbs works when you step it up just a little bit as well. It doesn't necessarily mean it was the most efficient and safest way to approach those climbs. It was only a few months after that video was shot that I had my first experience on a grade 4 climb, and I learned a hell of a lot that day. One of those things that I learned was just how inefficient my tactics and techniques were for approaching a climb at that grade. Now, since then, I've been on many grade 3 and 4 climbs, and my tactics have changed, my techniques have been adjusted, I'm more efficient at that, and as such, the rack has evolved. So I thought I would share with you guys what that evolution has looked like since then. Now, before we get started, it's absolutely worth mentioning, I'm not formally trained in any of this. What I'm going to be overviewing today comes from prior years of experience. Certainly just what I have learned since shooting the video 2 years ago, which at that point in time I had probably been trad climbing for roughly 5 years. But understand, there is no one right way to build a rack. There is no one right way to protect a climb. There's no one right way to anchor yourself in, to belay an individual. There are many different tactics that are employed. There are many different techniques. And preference is a big part of this. Certainly, the same equipment is used for a lot of the different techniques. And there are certainly some techniques that are far more safer than others to employ, but in the end it is really up to your discretion. I'm going to overview some of the stuff that some of the tactics I employed and the gear that I use for any particular climb. In fact, what I'm going to do is just pick a climb out of a guidebook and we'll just rack up for that particular climb, but you get to see the process that I go through when trying to figure out what I'm going to take up and what I might encounter on a climb. Before I get started, I have a lot of gear sitting out here. Some of this stuff I don't even use, such as these guys, these giant hexes, tri-cams, which I rarely have ever have used. I probably have far too many runners than I absolutely need. And this just comes from buying stuff and not knowing if I would need it or not. I don't know how many note takers are out there. And certainly even amongst the note takers, it comes in various degrees of note taking. It's absolutely a worthwhile thing to do. I see no disadvantage to taking notes. But if you're not into that, just film it. I mean, and even if you don't want to buy a GoPro, I mean, we all have phones nowadays. Just film it. Just film what you got. Just film what you're doing. I had the luxury and the opportunity of reviewing a video I shot 2 years ago and getting back in the mindset that I was at the time. Certainly, I mean, it was fun, don't get me wrong, but certainly it's amazing to see how ignorant I was of some things that I probably should not have been. Either way, I get the chance to learn from that, and you get a chance to share it, or see it, I'm sorry. I suppose if you want to share it, you can also do that too. Now, before I get into the real meat of it and all the hardware, I want to talk about the helmet and the harness. They're two crucial pieces of equipment. You probably have the one already, and it makes a difference. It makes a big difference depending upon the climate you're doing and even the gear that you're about to purchase to fill all that harness out.